Hey guys, it's Super User Stan here, back with another video. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new iPad mini. This came out earlier last week, and I've had some time to play around with it, and I want to compare this iPad with Apple's rest of the lineup, and talk about why you may want to actually pick up something like this over an iPad Pro or iPad Air. And spoiler alert, I think this is a very underrated little iPad, and I think it's great. Just to preface this isn't actually my iPad. This is my wife's brand new iPad. Up until now, she's been using something like an iPad mini second generation or third generation. It's at least 6 to 8 years old at this point, and she's been very overdue for an upgrade. But the problem is, she's been liking the mini form factor for a while now, and we've had some great iPads that came along. This is the iPad Pro. This is actually my iPad Pro, and the problem is she's been complaining that those are too big and too heavy to comfortably use in a reading scenario or in on the bed and browsing the internet in one hand scenario. So that's why she's been waiting and waiting, and finally we have the latest 6th generation iPad mini. So what is so special about this iPad mini? Well, from the outside you can see that the overall size is relatively unchanged and that I can hold it with one hand. The screen has gotten bigger. You've got more of an edge-to-edge design, and it copies the iPad Pro and iPad Air that was released earlier this year. What that means is you get relatively thinner bezels, no more home button, and a USB Type-C connection at the bottom. Also unique about this iPad is that you have the buttons on the top here. You have a Touch ID button at the very top for your power button, as well as Touch ID. And your volume buttons are to the left of that at the very top. And you might be wondering, that's a little strange for a location. And indeed, you are right, they used to be on the left side here. The reason why they moved it is because of compatibility with the 2nd generation Apple Pencil, which sticks to either side of this iPad. I personally don't have an Apple Pencil, but I can see why they would like to move the volume buttons to the top. And honestly, once you get used to it, it's no big deal. Besides, you're most likely going to be consuming content like videos in landscape mode, and having the buttons on the left-hand side or the right-hand side in landscape mode isn't going to be that big of an issue. Now you can see here my wife chose a electric orange smart cover. You can see the color is very, very vibrant, and the iPad itself is a pink. The pink is very light pink and is very unobtrusive and looks pretty good. If these colors don't suit your taste, you can also get the iPad in 3 different other colors. You got space gray, starlight, and purple. So you can choose whatever you like best. As for the iPad itself, honestly, this is a very nice little form factor. It is small enough to hold in one hand, at least with my medium-sized hands here, and it's light enough to easily use. And because it's significantly larger than an iPhone Max, this area or the weight is spread out across the area, it actually doesn't feel that dense or heavy. And if you were to read something or watch some videos and want to hold this iPad in one hand, you can easily do it, and it really doesn't get fatigued, or your hand doesn't get tired over time. So I think the iPad mini, if this is what you're trying to go for, is a very excellent little device for one-handed use. Now, what else about this iPad on the outside? Well, you've got a single camera bump on the back, and indeed this time you do have a bump for the camera. However, I don't think this bump is too pronounced, and with a case like the smart covers, that is covered up by the cover, and you really don't have any issues with protruding back sides. Now, the camera on the back is a 12 megapixel camera, and you also have a little flash. I think this is perfect for an iPad of this size because honestly, on my iPad Pro here, I've got 2 cameras and a LiDAR sensor and a flash and whatever. And honestly, I've never used the back-facing camera on the iPad. I think that's kind of overkill, so A single camera on the back is great for scanning in documents or taking pictures of receipts if you need, those kind of things. Really, you probably don't need any more for an iPad like this. On the front side here, you also have a 12 megapixel camera. Now this camera, you probably will use a lot, FaceTime or taking selfies if you want. But this has a very wide field of view, 128 or 122 degrees field of view, and this is got Apple's latest center stage function, so it kind of tracks your face around as you move through the screen. It's a cool little function, and I think this is a very nice little upgrade because, like I said, you're probably going to be using FaceTime on the iPad a lot more than taking, I don't know, landscape photos with the back of the camera. Now, the last thing I want to touch upon is the speakers. You've got speakers on the top side of the iPad as well as the bottom. So you have stereo speakers in landscape mode, and honestly, I think the speakers are actually pretty decent. It wasn't that long ago where iPad speakers were pretty crap, and it seems that they have improved quite a bit over the years. And when I'm using this iPad, I don't feel like I have to grab my AirPods to watch an Instagram video or a YouTube video. Of course, putting on the headphones is always going to give you a better experience, but I'm not automatically grabbing those. I think the speakers are just fine. On the inside of this iPad, you'll find an A15 Bionic chip. This is actually the latest and greatest, and it is the same chip found in the iPhone 13s. This is actually faster than the A14 chip found in the iPad Airs. However, it's going to be a step down from the iPad Pros, which has the M1 chip that's very similar to a laptop CPU, if you will. That said, it's plenty fast and plenty capable for everything you'll want to do on this iPad. Everything from browsing videos to even playing some games. The GPU is perfectly fine for something like this. So I think you'll be very happy with the performance of this iPad for many, many, many years to come. All right, now that you know a little bit more about the iPad, let's talk about why you would pick the Mini over something like the Air or the Pro. So let's first talk about the Pro. For most people who are looking at the iPad Pro, they're looking at buying the best of the best, and money really isn't that big of a concern. They want the best performance and the best screen, the 120 hertz display, and they're really doing a lot of intensive 3D rendering because the chip on the inside of the iPad Pro is the same M1 chip that can be found in the MacBook Air, so it's a very capable iPad. Now, for everyone else who's not looking for that kind of level of performance, that's where the iPad Air comes in. It's the same dimensions and has very capable processors on the inside, the A14 Bionic, but it's going to be a step down from the M1 chip, and the screen is a little bit downgraded, and everything about it is a little bit at a lower level. And I do think that iPad is going to be perfect for most people because most people are just going to be browsing YouTube, on Facebook, Instagram, browsing the net, and reading books, and I think that's great. However, if you are in the camp where you think that the iPad Air is even too big, or you want something a little smaller, that's kind of where the Mini comes in. And really, I think you're gonna have to think about how you're gonna be using the iPad Mini. For my wife here, like I said, she really wants an iPad to be used in bed, and reading right before going to bed, or browsing the internet while laying down. She'll sometimes hold the iPad up, and with an iPad Air or iPad Pro, that's gonna be too heavy to hold in one hand. And that's where I think this really excels. Just for comparison's sake, if you have, let's say, a light novel, right? And the size of this light novel is a really good size where you can hold with one hand and read. That's basically the same thing. Load up your favorite book on the Apple Books page or Amazon Kindle or whatever, and it's a really good reader of a device. And then also, if you have your favorite manga, again, whatever you like to read here, it's going to be really good size to be able to use and to consume that content. And again, I think that's really where you have to make a decision on how you're actually going to be consuming content, and is a mini good enough? It does have a relatively low price of $500 starting price point, so it's going to be a really good contender for your entry-level iPads. For me, personally, I prefer a bigger device. You know, I'll use my 16-inch MacBook Pro in bed, but I can certainly see why someone would really like a smaller device. If you found this video useful, make sure to hit that like button, and if you want to see more tech videos like this, you can always hit that subscribe button. As always, my name is Stan, and I'll see you guys in the next one.